What's going on, everybody? Ryan here, Rhino Racing, Rhino 411, back at you with another video. So a lot has happened since my last video, which was going over the brake removal of the R6. I didn't record everything that I've done since then, partly because I've just had some days where, excuse me, that I just came into the garage, just wanted to keep my head down and just grind stuff out and get stuff done. So I didn't take time to record certain things, partly because I ran into some little bumps along the way that took a lot longer than I was anticipating. But I figured I'd start out with a quick update for all of you. First, as you guys can see, I've got a little different hat on. Got some cool gear from Superbikesupply, and I really was digging this camo, so I had to have it. So if you guys are interested in anything, check out the link below. Eric will hook you up. Like I said, he's got a lot of really cool gear available right now, so definitely check that out. Now moving on to the R6. Like I said, we removed the brake system last time, so what have I done since then? So I wanted to give the bike a once over. Obviously, I wasn't going to go and tear down the motor. It's a street motor. It's got a little over 8,000 miles on it. Seemed like it's still in really good condition, completely stock. So I did a valve clearance check. So I took the valve cover off, obviously, to do the valve clearance check. Ended up doing a compression test and a leak down test. Everything passed. All the valves were within spec. And then I worked on cleaning up the wiring, and I'll kind of show you guys here as best I can. So all the wiring here, up underneath, did my best to kind of clean that up and stick that underneath. The regulator rectifier was originally on and mounted right here on the radiator. Now, to me, that's a very vulnerable spot. I wanted to move it out of there, especially if you ever have a little low side. You know, that spot's going to be really vulnerable, so I wanted to mount it on the engine in a cleaner spot. There's a bunch of wiring and stuff there as well. So what I did is I spent some time with the wiring diagram and then went through and tucked all that under there as best I could and cleaned things up. Kind of rerouted some of this wiring. You can see I rewrapped some of it because like I said, I took some time with the wiring diagram to figure out what was what. Eliminated a couple little things. You can see we removed the radiator fans. But again, one of the main things was to get this mounted on the bike. Fortunately, there were a couple mounts already available. So I utilized one of those, and then we've gone through and kind of cleaned up some of the wiring, like I said. And see what else. I've done a quick mock-up of my Domino quick turn throttle with cables. So that's routed through underneath, and then we'll go here for the throttle bodies. Also, I did kind of the initial wiring and mount for the Translogic auto blip system. So we've done that. I mocked up the battery and moved a couple of wires around. I don't have that in its final place yet, but you can kind of see I've got some zip ties here to move some of the wires out of the way because the throttle bodies were a bit tight. I should say they are a bit tight to get in. So I needed to make sure the wiring back over here was out of the way enough so I could set this into place. And I also re-greased the headstock bearings, so I took this out and re-greased those and cleaned those up. And let's think, what else have I done? It may not sound like a lot, considering the time I know I've spent doing it, but like I said, I ran into a couple little issues that took longer than I was hoping. One of them being removing the kickstand mount from underneath here. The bolts were very soft and there was quite a lot of Loctite on there, so I ended up having to put quite a lot of heat on those to get those removed. And I had to take my time with that, obviously, because I didn't want to strip those, because that would have turned into an even worse mess. So where does that leave us right now? Well, the cool thing is, now we're at the point where we can start putting on those fun parts, go fast parts. Like I said, I already mocked up the throttle, and I just removed the stock air filter, which is there. And as you can see, I've got a DNA filter. from Superbikesupply that I already put onto the Airbox, and it comes pre-oiled. So I've got that set right there. Kind of show you guys the difference in comparison here between. So there's the stock Airbox on the right, and then the new not Airbox, I'm sorry, stock air filter on the right, and then the DNA air filter on the left. And you can see it's much larger surface area. So there's not this extra, covered on the sides here. So that fits in nicely. So what I'm going to work on right now is just getting that mocked up. My goal right now is to get the Airbox button back up and just start cleaning those things up. I guess a couple other little things I did have to do is, so I was waiting on the Woodcraft key elimination plug harness piece, which is, you can see part of it here with there. They give you obviously plenty of wiring. And then I did plug in and mock up the auto blipper, like I said, and then I've got the quick shifter, which is right here, Translogic. And that plugs in here, so you just have to make sure, so there's two plugs that come off the quick shifter. Obviously you want to make sure the one that goes to the auto blip and the one that goes to the quick shifter are the correct direction, because one is push, one is pull. I'm going to be running in GP shift, so I wanted to make sure I had that set up correctly, which I believe I do. And once we get the Airbox on, I'm just going to start checking stuff off the list. And I really want to get everything buttoned up on the engine part, and the wiring, because I didn't want to start putting some other stuff on before I got that done, because then I was just going to have to take it off again. So I was waiting on, the key elimination piece and clean up the wiring, the general check over on the engine. Like I said, the valve clearance check, leak down compression. But I wanted to get that done before I put the exhaust on, and I want to put the exhaust on before I get the radiator button back up. I want to get the radiator button back up before I put the forks on, and then when I put the forks on, I can put the controls on. So a lot of little things leading to different steps, and obviously I want to make sure I make the most use of my time and not have to redo stuff. So I wasn't going to go put the controls on, only have to take it all back off to put the exhaust on, or to put in the Woodcraft key elimination piece. So with that being said, we're going to keep taking that stuff off. I did get my attack rear sets in, so I'm excited to put those on, but I want to put the rear shock on first, so then I can utilize the rear stand, and then I can remove these jacks. And then once that's done, like I said, we'll put the attack rear sets on, and then we'll start hooking up the brake lines, and then just keep clicking things off as we go. Judging how the bike looks right now, it looks like there's a lot left to do, and in truth be told, there is quite a bit, but it's not a crazy amount. And I'm hoping things go smoothly and we don't run into too many unforeseen issues, but keep our fingers crossed. So, that being said, let's do some wrenching. All right, it just involves some lining up some screws and tightening things up, but there's the Airbox. So check another one off the long list. Now, before I get going on this too far, I just kind of want to show you. So we've got the radiator mocked up, all the wiring's tucked back in there, so nothing's, you know, sticking out or rubbing badly there. I'm gonna wait to do this bottom bolt in case I still need to move this. I'm still working on the exhaust, getting that mocked up like I said. So this is a used Graves exhaust I found a good deal on. And we're just gonna put, you know, the mid pipes on. I'm actually getting, so the exhaust can that I have is the older model, older gen, I don't know how older gen, but it's the older Graves exhaust. Some of you may recognize it as not being, you know, the newer one. But I do have my can that was on my motoamerica bike. But I did order a new can for that bike, and then I took the older can, well, the old can, but it's the current gen can, so it's the new ones, it's not this old one. But it does have a crack in it. Still functional, but there is a crack in the sleeve, so I don't have the can here, but there's a crack probably around, like there, about that long. So I'm having a friend fix that. And then once that's fixed, I'll put that on this bike. So then they'll both have the newer gen can, and they'll mostly match. So as you can see here, I'm working on mocking up the rest of the exhaust. Just kind of checking out and making sure I'm going about it the right way. However, I found out later that what I needed to do is actually mock the entire exhaust up on the bike, or off the bike first rather, and then put it on the bike because I was having some fitment issues with it. So I guess long story short is what I'm doing now ends up really not mattering, because I was having issues basically getting everything to stay tight. And again, it was just another one of those learning things where I'm going through, and I was kind of approaching it how I would on the SV, but again, learning new things, figured that out, and got it done eventually. Now, moving on from the exhaust, moved on to the suspension. So what I'm working on now is the rear shock. So this is a TTX shock by Öhlins. It's the same kind of shock that I have on my A bike. So again, I want things to match as much as possible. So as per usual, this is a new experience for me, so I'm going through everything, trying to figure out how to get the shock on in the most efficient manner. And here you can kind of see I'm loosening up the subframe so I can get at the shock a little bit easier, and also going to mock up a hole on the left side to help gain access to the top shock mount bolt if I ever need to take the shock out. That way, if I'm trackside, I don't have to do things like I am now, loosening up the subframe or undoing the top shock mount bolt that comes down from the top of the subframe. And just for clarification, so the Öhlins shock and the forks I had serviced by Turn 1 Racing, who also did the engine refresh on the bike. I got both those parts used. The fork cartridges I got from a friend, and then the TTX shock I actually got with this bike as part of a package deal. So that kind of worked out nicely that way. So everything's set up on that end. And the next kind of steps is I was able to get the bike mocked up and put together, but I was having some issues getting it to start. But I did take it down with me to Barber Motorsports Park for preseason testing as a backup in case I needed some spare parts. It's my first time riding the A-bike once it had been refreshed. So I'm going to be covering that in my next update, as well as getting the B-bike running, because I was having issues, like I said, getting it to start. And I'll kind of talk about how I diagnosed that and how I figured it out. It ended up being a really simple fix, but again, just another one of those learning things. So just to recap, the next update I have, I'll be talking about preseason testing, how that went, how the B-bike's coming along, and then actually how we got the B-bike buttoned up with the project bike. And I actually did my first laps on it and got to do a shakedown test on it. There's still a few things that we need to work out, but it is at least rideable now. So I'm excited to share that with all of you. I appreciate you all being patient. I know this update's been a bit delayed, but like I said, scheduling wise, a lot of stuff's come up recently, and I've just kind of had to put my head down, keep grinding, and just keep working through everything. But I'll be sharing another update with all of you soon. I appreciate you all checking out the video, and we're just going to keep grinding as we get closer to Moto America. Thanks.